Why did Linda Ronstadt walk away from the spotlight when she was at the top? What made her turn down some of the biggest deals in music history? And why did some of her closest collaborators quietly disappear from her story, never to be mentioned again? This isn't just another music documentary. This is the story of a woman who broke every rule and paid a price no one ever saw coming. Linda Ronstadt didn't need tabloid drama to leave a mark. She didn't scream back at critics, didn't feud publicly, and never needed to chase a headline. Instead, she sang with a voice so rich, so emotionally precise, that it forced the world to stop and listen. But what the world didn't know, what she never said out loud until much later, was how much of her success came at a cost she rarely spoke of. While some stars climbed to the top by pushing others down, Linda rose by lifting people up, mentoring, supporting, and spotlighting the talents around her. But not everyone gave that loyalty back. There were betrayals. There were moments of quiet heartbreak. There were legendary names she helped build who later acted like she never existed. Yet through it all, she said nothing. Now, decades later, the silence has lifted. The picture is finally coming into focus, and what it reveals is a portrait of a woman who survived the chaos of fame not by playing louder, but by playing smarter. Stay with us as we go deeper into the legacy of Linda Ronstadt, not just the music, but the hidden resilience that made her unforgettable. Because once you understand what she faced, you'll never hear her voice the same way again. Before the sold-out arenas, the Grammy wins, or the genre-shattering albums, Linda Ronstadt was just a teenager from Tucson with a voice that made strangers cry. Born into a musical family of Mexican and German descent, Linda grew up surrounded by folk traditions, harmonies, and stories that wove music into the very soul of her identity. She wasn't groomed for stardom. She chased it herself, boarding a Greyhound to Los Angeles with nothing but hope and the belief that her voice could speak louder than the noise of the industry. In LA, she hit the coffeehouse circuit with the Stone Ponies and at just 21 scored her first hit with Different Drum. But the moment the record label saw dollar signs, they tried to package her, sell her as cute, marketable, replaceable. Linda didn't argue, she just changed the game. She went solo, she took control, and most importantly, she picked her band. She didn't want session players picked by a label. She wanted real musicians, people with something to prove. Two of them? A pair of scrappy unknowns named Don Henley and Glenn Frey. Yes, those Henley and Frey, the ones who would later form the Eagles. While most people think the Eagles launched Linda's career, it was the other way around. She gave them their shot. Let that sink in. But here's where things get complicated. As the men she helped elevate climbed higher, Linda started to disappear from their stories. There were no thank yous, no credits. Some even mocked her artistic choices in interviews. And what did Linda do? Nothing. She kept singing. She let the silence speak for itself. But behind that silence was a story she never told, until now. By the early 1970s, Linda Ronstadt had a choice: play it safe and stick to the familiar, or take a risk that could alienate fans, labels, and critics alike. She chose the latter. While most artists were clinging to a single genre to keep their chart positions predictable, Linda did something almost no one in her position dared to do. She switched lanes, and then she did it again, and again. Country? She mastered it with aching ballads and honky-tonk heat. Rock? She brought power and polish without sacrificing vulnerability. Pop? She had hit after hit that crossed over without apology. Even classical and mariachi? She didn't just dabble, she delivered. Critics didn't always know what to make of her. She wasn't easy to categorize, and in an industry obsessed with packaging, that was seen as a problem. But Linda didn't care about fitting into their boxes. She cared about the song, and if it moved her, if it had heart, grit, melody, she was going to sing it. Period. Still, that creative courage came at a cost. Radio stations didn't always know where to place her. Some producers doubted her vision, and a few of her male peers, some of whom she had helped early on, openly mocked her for being too commercial or just a voice. But those who really listened knew better. Linda Ronstadt wasn't just a singer. She was a genre-defying force of nature who let her instincts lead and changed the industry in the process. And while others were chasing headlines, she was busy chasing harmonies. While others in the music industry worked overtime to lock down their image, Linda Ronstadt did something revolutionary. She refused to have one. She was already dominating rock and country charts when critics and executives started asking her the same question over and over again. What are you, Linda? Are you country? Are you pop? Are you rock? Are you serious? But Linda didn't answer. She sang her answer. One year she was belting out, "You're no good," with rock star swagger. The next, she was crooning old Mexican boleros that honored her family's roots. One month, she was performing with Nelson Riddle's orchestra, channeling Sinatra's Ghost, and the next, she was booking sessions with Emmylou Harris and Dolly Parton. To the music industry, it looked like chaos. To her fans, it was art. Why won't she just stay in one lane? Because Linda Ronstadt never saw the road as having just one direction. While other artists got trapped in the narrow expectations of genre, she broke those expectations down, one song at a time. And for that, some people in the business whispered behind her back. They called her confused, too commercial, even calculating. But here's the truth. It takes tremendous courage to walk away from a formula that works. Linda could have stayed in one genre and coasted forever. But that wasn't her. She wanted the challenge, the stretch, the truth, even when the rewards were uncertain, even when the risks were real. And those risks didn't just live in sales numbers. They came with professional jealousy, dismissive critics, and artists she'd once helped, now mocking her behind the scenes for being just a singer. But behind the humility, Linda remembered, she heard the whispers, and she stored it all away, not to lash out, but to dig deeper into the music, to use the emotion, not retaliate with headlines. Because when people doubted her artistry, she didn't fight them with words. She answered with range, with emotion, with truth. And in doing so, she didn't just blur the lines between genres. She erased them. In an industry filled with clashing egos and loud opinions, Linda's quiet strength was often misunderstood. She didn't clap back at critics. She didn't engage in rivalries. And she never publicly aired the betrayals she faced, though there were many. She once told a friend, "I don't need to win the argument. I just need to keep making the music I believe in." That kind of discipline takes a different kind of power. There were moments when people she had supported early in their careers ignored her success later. Times when she was mocked for choosing songs that didn't fit the cool mold. Men who underestimated her, producers who talked over her, executives who tried to market her as something she wasn't. And yet, she never exploded, never spiraled, never lost her way. Instead, she did the unthinkable in a fame-hungry industry. She stayed true to herself. In 1987, when most rock artists were doubling down on commercial hits, Linda took another sharp left turn into mariachi. Canciones de mi Padre, a Spanish-language album honoring her Mexican heritage, was not what the labels expected. Some called it career suicide. Instead, it became the best-selling non-English album in American history. She didn't do it for charts or image. She did it for her father, for her roots, for the culture that shaped her voice long before she was a star. She sang every note with the same fire she brought to arenas, and in doing so, she proved that artistry has no borders, and neither does heart. In the 2000s, something began to shift. Linda's legendary voice, which once soared through so many genres with ease, began to falter. She later revealed she had developed a rare condition that affected her vocal cords. It was devastating, not just for her, but for generations who grew up on her music. But Linda didn't wallow. She didn't beg for sympathy. Instead, she did what she had always done. She handled it with quiet grace. She retired from singing and stepped back from the spotlight, giving her final interviews with dignity, humor, and honesty. She never needed a dramatic farewell tour or a teary farewell album. She simply said goodbye when she was ready. Today, Linda Ronstadt is rarely mentioned in the same breath as some of the rock giants she once mentored, collaborated with, or outshined, and that's the quiet injustice of it all. But the truth is, few have done what she did. She gave rise to others, but never demanded credit. She crossed musical boundaries before it was trendy. She survived an industry that didn't always make room for women with opinions, and she did it all without the gossip, the feuds, or the manufactured chaos that fuels so many legacies. Her power was in her restraint, her legacy in the echoes of every genre she dared to touch. She didn't need to scream to be heard. She just sang, and that was more than enough. Sometimes the loudest voices in history are not the ones who shouted the most, but the ones who knew when to stay silent and when to sing. Linda Ronstadt is more than a name from the past. She's a lesson, a reminder that true greatness doesn't need approval, headlines, or even a perfect ending. It only needs courage, integrity, and a voice that refuses to be boxed in. And Linda Ronstadt, she had all three.